Do you lie awake at night thinking, how the heck, or any other expression you want to use, am I ever going to buy a house? Well, you're not alone, and I'm going to dive into that today as well. Take a look at the latest stats in the GTA and take your questions as always right here, right now on Live at Lunch. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm Lambros Demos on this beautiful Wednesday afternoon. But what's not so beautiful is how this is the struggle that first-time home buyers have in today's market to buy a home. I just put up a post not even an hour ago about the discrepancy between income and home prices and how much it's grown between in the last 4 decades, in the last 40 years since 1984. Hey, Fernando, thanks for joining me. So it's just mind-boggling because you hear it all the time, but you don't really understand it until you see it, in a graph format like that was. So that was really eye-opening and mind-boggling. So next time, someone says, "Oh, I bought a home, for X amount. You're paying too much, et cetera, et cetera." Show them this graph because it's just insane how much prices have changed. And it's not only prices though. So here's the other thing. So people always talk about home prices, and yes, they are much, much higher than they were even, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and they have grown disproportionately to income. So that's the other thing. So it's not just that home prices are higher, it's that income hasn't kept pace with it. And also, there's other reasons as well. There is policy changes. For example, the down payment now required is more than it used to be before. I think some maybe 5, 7 years ago, you could buy a house with 5% down. You still can today, but it has to be under $500,000. So anything over $500,000 to $1 million requires a 10% deposit, and anything over $1 million requires a 20% deposit. So it's a little bit complicated in that respect. And then we have tighter mortgage qualification policies as well. Lending criteria have changed, making it more and more difficult for home buyers to get into the market. Then you got the stress test on top of that as well. Not to mention interest rates. Everybody's complaining about interest rates being so high. And yes, they are higher than they were a couple years ago, absolutely. But interest rates, when you compare them, because if we're going to compare today's home prices to 40 years ago home prices, the interest rate back then was like 20%, 18%, 20%, 21%. I heard as high as 21%. So the interest rates, yes, they are a factor today, but they're not the main factor that's preventing people from buying a house. So there's some other reasons here as well, which I've written down. We talked about home prices, interest rates, policies. The ability to save for a down payment is much harder these days, right? Because life is just more expensive, right? And when you consider inflation, obviously, but also consider the age of a first-time home buyer. They're typically going to be either starting maybe late 20s, but probably in the 30s now. And these people may have finished school, so they probably are still carrying a significant amount of student debt, right? So that's preventing them from saving. Everything's expensive these days. If they're renting, that's going to prevent them from saving. So a lot of people are staying home longer than they were before. So now it's not unusual for someone in their 30s to be at home saving money if their goal is to buy a home, obviously. And then people are moving out, older and older. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. It depends on the family situation. It depends on the culture, how people do that. Because in some cultures, it's actually quite normal to stay at home until you're married, or for longer. I'm European, for example, and I know a lot of European cultures, they're actually, expected to stay home, or the parents in some cases are offended if the child leaves the house without getting married. And sometimes even if they are married, they still get offended. What, you don't want to live with me? Thing, after I raised you, and et cetera, et cetera. So they throw the guilt trip at you. So if you're European and you've experienced that situation, give me a like or tell me about your situation there, because it happens quite often. Anyways, I don't want to get off on a tangent. We talked about staying at home longer. Um, and then there's the job market. Obviously, it's less secure than it is these days. I just read a report on how productivity is much lower now than it was even a year or so ago. Um, so there's been, with inflation and high interest rates, comes unemployment, right? The Bank of Canada wants to see higher unemployment numbers, right? So, so there is an unstable job market out there as well. Similarly, all these interest rates are, preventing builders from building homes. And it's not a combination. It's not just interest rates. It's lack of affordability on the buyer side. When people can't afford to buy homes are not going to get built, because no builder is going to start building without having sold at least X number of houses on a certain project, right? So there's fewer and fewer things being built. There's more red tape, more permits, and NIMBYism. If you don't know what NIMBYism is, not in my backyard. So a lot of community groups, they put up roadblocks for new construction in certain areas. Zoning is an issue. I know the bylaws just changed. Now you can allow up to 4 units per lot, etc. But trying to get these things built is a nightmare, right? You got to go through permits. You got to go through the community. You got to go through so many hoops and hurdles to get something built these days. So that's an issue, and that also leads to higher home prices. Um, I would be remiss if I didn't mention immigration. So the federal government certainly has to take their part of the blame as well for higher home prices. And this is not to point finger at immigrants. I mean, they're doing what they can to come here. My family immigrated here. I was born here, but my parents immigrated here. Um, the problem is, when you bring in too many people and you don't have anywhere to put them, then it becomes a problem, because now you've increased the demand, but the supply is still low, and you're not doing anything about the supply. And then when that happens, when there's a huge gap between supply and demand, where the demand is higher, guess what happens to price? It's going to go up, and that has been one of the main factors of home prices going up. At least in the last 8 to 10 years, if not more than that. You know, um, and some people are pointing the fingers at boomers, which is absolutely ridiculous in my opinion. They're saying, oh, they're staying in their homes too long. There's so many empty bedrooms. These people, could be rented out. They should be moving out. Uh, you know, Nobody has the right to tell someone else what to do with their house. If somebody wants to stay in their 4-bedroom home by themselves, they have every right to do so. It's their house. It's paid off. And if they're comfortable there and safe there, then why should they have to move? Is my opinion. If you have a different opinion, by all means, post your comment here, which is great. But I'm of the opinion that it's your house. You have every right to stay in it. Nobody can tell you what to do with it. So, pointing the fingers at boomers and saying, oh, now they charge, not charge, but they're asking so much for their homes. It's the market, people. It's the market. It's not boomers. You would do the same thing if you were in their position. Just because they got lucky 20, 30, 40 years ago when they bought their house, and now it has, increased in price tenfold or whatever it has, you can't blame them for that. That's they were in the right spot at the right time. So we have to find real solutions. We can't just be pointing fingers at the boomers. And you know what? they're not going to be around much longer anyway. So they're either going to be downsizing and moving into a retirement home, a nursing home, or, sadly, they'll be passing away as well. That's life, right? So what do you think is going to happen with these houses that all these boomers are staying in? Most of them, hopefully all of them will be transferred or, inherited by the next generation, their kids or their grandkids or whoever it is. Hopefully the government doesn't take them. And this is just an off tangent thing. If you don't have a will and there's no immediate family member, then the government can come in and take your assets, right? So you got to be very careful with that. I would speak to um, an attorney, tax lawyer, real estate lawyer, anybody who can guide you in that respect, right? So, but very important, please have a will. It just makes things so much easier, and you don't want disputes from your family members or anybody like that, contesting it. Just make it nice and clear as to who gets the property and what is allocated to who. So anyways, that's the tangent I was going to go off on there. So as I mentioned, the average age of first-time home buyers is going up, and more adult children are living at home longer, or sometimes they're moving back in with their parents. They try it out on their own. Maybe they went to school, they lived in res or wherever, and now they're moving back home, staying there, getting a job, or they tried renting, and it was just too expensive. They moved back in, etc. So there's a lot of that going on. But despite all this, despite home prices going up and all this, the dream of home ownership is not dead. We're still talking about it today. Tim Hudak, who is the CEO, I believe, of the Ontario Real Estate Association, claimed about 75% of postgraduate students still desire to own their own home. And that's a significant chunk of people. There was speaking of the Ontario Real Estate Association, there was a survey put out a couple of years ago where I guess 9 out of 10 parents believe that owning a home is still important for their kids. Don't know how the kids feel, but the parents still do, and that is probably why they're helping their children achieve that. Which leads me into my next train of thought here. How to get into the market, right? We know it's very expensive. We know it's difficult. We know there's lots of challenges. So, but people are still finding ways to get in, and it's still a good investment, 100%. I would say that right now, despite the increase in home prices, because long term, guess what? These home prices are going to continue going up. I'm of the opinion that they will continue going up, and many people are, because of the fundamentals. They're not making any more land. I know it's a cliche, but it's true. We're running out of space to build homes, and we keep bringing people in. So immigration is going to continue, and we're going to be running out of houses. Yes, the boomers will move on, but we're still bringing in too many people, and we don't have enough supply. We have a supply issue. Not enough houses are being built to accommodate all the people that are coming in to the country. And yes, they're going to put a cap on international students. They've banned foreign buyers but these things make a small impact. They don't make a significant impact that's going to allow affordability to come down and balance the scales. It might bring it down a little bit, but it's not going to be a factor whereby you're going to see home prices crash or come down. Hopefully we get to a point where it's a little more affordable and the market is more balanced, because everything is better that way. It's a much healthier market when the market is balanced, as opposed to an extreme seller's market that we've been through since the pandemic. Or sometimes we've had periods of a buyer's market as well. So a nice balanced market is the way to go, and hopefully we'll see more of that going forward. So I believe it's still a good investment to be made. Again, if you disagree, by all means, post your comment here, and post your questions here too. I'd love for this to be interactive. If you have a question and I'm still on the air, by all means, I will answer it while I'm live. But if you're watching this on the replay and I happen to be off the air, please also still post your questions and your comments, and I'll get to them as soon as possible. I love to engage with my audience here. And the sad truth is that we are becoming, if we're not already there, a two-tier society. There's going to be owners and there's going to be non-owners of real estate. And real estate is probably going to be the defining line between, the haves and the have-nots. Those who own real estate can enjoy the ride, appreciate like boomers have over the last few decades. And I think that's going to continue, not to the same degree, obviously, but it'll still continue. Home prices will still continue to go up, especially in certain pockets. And those who aren't there, they're going to be on the have-not side. Say what you want about stock market or cryptocurrency. I still believe real estate is still the best investment and the safest investment that you can make, despite what's been happening the last couple of years, where interest rates have gone up and home prices came down about 20%. But prior to that, they skyrocketed 50%, right? So we're still up about 30% from where we were maybe before the pandemic started. So, and over time, if you're looking at it from a 10-year period, a 20-year period, it's going to be higher. I'm very comfortable saying that because it's always been that way, and I can't see anything changing. It has to be a really dramatic change. If a pandemic can't even, bring home prices down, then what is going to bring home prices down? It goes back to the fundamentals, demand and supply. There's not enough supply to meet the demand, so that means price is going to continue upwards. So how can you get into the market, right? So, it's all fine and dandy to point the fingers and say, oh, boomers this, immigration that. But why don't we look for solutions as to how to get into the market? So if you are a first-time home buyer or you're thinking about buying a home for the first time, and you're struggling to find ways to get into the market, there are options for you. Obviously the traditional option is to have a high-paying job, good credit, and go the traditional route of qualifying, getting a mortgage, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so aside from that, though, there are some other ways, and over half of the first-time home buyers between the ages of 18 and 38, according to the same survey that I referenced earlier, you had help from the Bank of Mom and Dad. You may have heard that before. So the Bank of Mom and Dad is basically, could be boomers or could be their parents or maybe grandparents, any relative really, who helps them get into the market, either by loaning them some money or gifting them some money, or maybe helping them with the mortgage payments, or maybe even going on title themselves, so co-signing or guaranteeing a loan, getting in there as well. So we have seen a significant increase in people that own 2 or more properties. Oh, look at the balloons. Don't know where that came from. It's not my birthday. So we have seen an increase in that. And it's not so much an investment property that these people are buying, whereas it could be just parents helping children or their adult children, get into the market and buying. I've had clients like that whose parents have helped them, get into the market. And over half, as I said, of the first-time home buyers have had some help from their parents. About a third of them had received a loan, I believe, and about a quarter of them had received a gift. And the average amount of these gifts was $74,000, which is a huge chunk of change, and it can help somebody get into the market, obviously, as they use that as a part of their down payment, right? And that's all across Ontario. So the average in Ontario, $74,000. I'm sure in the GTA, it was significantly higher. I think I had mentioned around $100,000 a couple of years ago when I was doing some research into this as well. So there is that avenue, and if you're one of the lucky ones that does have a relative that can help you get into the market, by all means, take advantage of that. But be careful, especially if you're the one doing the lending. Get some legal advice as well, because anything can happen. You need to know the risks involved in all that. Um, and that applies as well if you're buying a house with somebody else, right? I mean, I'm not talking about a spouse, but maybe you're not married yet, or maybe you're buying a house with a family member. It could be a sister or brother, or even a friend. There's been a trend lately that people are talking about co-ownership with, friends. So friends getting together and buying houses together because that's the only way they can get into the market. It sounds like a okay idea on the surface, but the more you think about it, uh, it comes with its own set of risks as well. So be careful, how you approach that, and you should know exactly what you're getting into. And as I said, legal advice is always something that you should take into account as well before you jump into one of these situations, whether it's co-ownership, whether it's lending money to somebody or gifting money to somebody, or going on title for somebody as well. So there's that. Other ways to get into the market, obviously, there's alternative lending scenarios, right? We talk about traditional lenders all the time. The big five banks, they have really, really tight qualifying criteria, right? So, and if you can't meet them, there are alternative lenders out there for you that may be less stringent on their policies, especially somebody who's self-employed, for example, may require an alternative lender, right? So it's not all shady stuff. It's not Rocco or Tiny coming out and with the baseball bat if you can't pay your mortgage kind of thing. We're not talking about those kind of alternative lenders. But speaking of that, there are private lenders out there, legitimate private lenders out there. And if you are going to go the private lending route, just be careful, because there are so many snakes and scorpions out there. So you want to be careful. And if you are going to get a private loan, make sure it's coming from a trusted mortgage broker who can vet these private lenders for you and knows their history, because you don't want to get caught in a bad situation. I think I brought it up before. When I bought my first place a few years back, I had to use a private lender, and it was just a nightmare. They made me pay for everything, not on my own fees, the lawyer's fees. They made up charge for this, a charge for that, this and that. So many stupid things that had come up that you had to pay for. It was just a nightmare dealing with these people, and I didn't trust them. To make a long story short, and when my mortgage was due, I couldn't wait to pay it off. So I asked my lawyer to, can we just pay this? It was due in like 2 weeks or something. I asked him, can we just pay it off now and move on and arrange, a mortgage with somebody else? And these assholes, for lack of a better word, they said, no, absolutely not. You're not going to pay it off, not even a day earlier. So my lawyer, the day before it was coming due, said, okay, tomorrow's a holiday, so can we pay it off today? No, they wouldn't let me pay it off, not even a day earlier without a penalty. That's the kind of people that we're dealing with. And then because the day was due was a holiday, I couldn't pay it off till the next day. So they charged me interest on the holiday, as well. And I had already given them post-dated checks, for the month following that. I think I'd given them too many post-dated checks. So it was coming due in August. And I had given them a post-dated check for September. And I had a feeling that these assholes, I say it again, were going to try and cash that September check, even though I had just, paid off the entire mortgage and had it discharged. I had just had a feeling that they would try and cash that check. So I called my bank and put a stop payment on that post-dated check. And next thing you know, after the September date came and went, sure enough, my bank confirmed that somebody did try to cash that post-dated check. So thank God I put that stop payment on it, whatever it cost me at the time, $5 or $7. And it was well worth it. So just be careful out there if you're going to go the private lending route. There are also government programs, right, which help a little bit. They're not going to be the answer to everything and to everyone, obviously, but they do help. There's RRSPs where you can take out up to $35,000 to help you purchase a home, and you don't have to pay it back for 15 years, but starting in year 2, so it adds up to about 17 years or so. And there's a little bit of a hack around that as well, which I've posted about as well, where if you make a contribution and leave it in there for 90 days, get your tax refund, and add that to your down payment. So then you pull out the original contribution that you made to the RSP, add it to the tax refund, and now you've just bumped up your down payment. So there's a way around that. If you want more information about that, send me a DM. Happy to discuss it with you. Or you can, there's a few posts that I put up about that as well, if you want to research that. There's the first home savings account, something like that, which was introduced a couple years ago. That allows you to add about $8,000 a year to a maximum of, I believe, $40,000, and it's cumulative. So if you don't, contribute the full $8,000 this year, you can top it up next year, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a way as well. It's kind of a forced savings and allows you to save money tax-free, so that when it's time for you to buy something, you can pull that money out. All these options are way better than any rent-to-own option that you're going to get into, because some people ask me about rent-to-own. I think rent-to-own is a terrible idea because life happens. If you're going to commit to a property, let's say you can't buy it 2 years from now. What if something happens in your life and you can't, you don't want to live there anymore? The neighborhood changes, life circumstances change, anything can happen in 2 years. But now you're stuck with that house, because the way rent-to-own works is you pay your monthly rent, but on top of that rent, you're going to pay an amount towards the down payment to the owner of the house, the landlord. And in most cases, you're not going to get that back if you change your mind. You can't buy it. So that money is lost. I would rather you put that money into some kind of savings account, whether it's a GIC, whether it's an ETF or something. Let it grow, mutual fund, whatever. Let it grow that way, savings, versus putting it towards that. And then when it's time for you to buy in 2 years, if that house is still available for sale, you want to buy it, great, go ahead. Or you can look at other options as well. So your options are much, much open at that point in time as to what you can buy. So I don't recommend rent-to-own as a way to get into the market. There was the first time home buyers incentive, which the government had introduced back in 2017, I think, and they've now just discontinued it. But it was useless anyways. People in these parts in the GTA, they didn't take advantage of it, obviously, because there was a cap as to how much you earn and how much you can buy for, which really didn't give you many options in terms of purchasing, right? It was for smaller communities, less expensive communities, and maybe it worked. But here in the GTA, it was absolutely useless. And so that's been discontinued anyway. And then The other trend that we're seeing lately is moving to a smaller market, right? Everybody wants to live in the GTA or GTHA or Hamilton, but if you're working from home or you don't mind moving elsewhere, there are still many affordable markets. Even here in Ontario, there's Windsor, there's Kingston, there's Belleville, all some very nice towns that you can move to. Um, which are much more affordable. Ottawa, much more affordable than they are here in the GTA. Or if you don't mind moving out of province, which a lot of people have been doing lately, we've seen a trend of buyers going to Calgary from Ontario. And the Calgary natives are pissed off because all they're doing is increasing the home prices there for the people in Calgary. So there's been a stink about that from the locals, but it's still happening. Nova Scotia is another place people are moving to. Two very affordable provinces, well, Nova Scotia and Alberta. Forget BC. I mean, Vancouver is just as bad as Toronto. But there are places across Canada that you can move to, very nice places, if working, or commuting to work, etc., is not an issue, or getting a job out there, working from home, etc., whatever it is that you do. So that's another option. But the only option that's not even an option, you should never, ever, ever consider fraud. Okay. There has been an increase in mortgage fraud, and that's never a good option. Don't even think about it. If somebody suggests that to you, I would report that person, right? Well, as long as you can do it safely and maybe anonymously, but never an option. It's not going to end well. You're looking at maybe it's a criminal charge, right? So you would have a criminal record at the very least. At the worst, you may end up going to jail as well. So mortgage fraud, no, 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 never, never, never. Don't even consider it. If somebody says, hey, you know what? Yeah, I know you only make 40,000 a year, but we can make it look like you're making 80,000 or 100,000. Run. Don't walk away from these people. It's not going to end well. So it's definitely not worth it doing that. Okay. If there are any questions, as I said, I'm happy to take them now while I'm live. Or if you're watching this on the replay, still go ahead and ask your question, and I'll answer it as soon as I can. I've already been going here for half an hour, so I want to go through the stats with you. Last week, the market was pretty slow all across the board, but we did see Peel Region pick up a little bit versus Toronto. Now it's the opposite. So Toronto has picked up a little bit over Peel Region. And the number of listings, for example, in Toronto dropped about 3%. And in Peel Region, they dropped about 21%. Home sales, they actually picked up in Toronto about 9%. But in Peel Region, they dropped 15%. And we've seen activity like showings and offers pick up as well in Toronto, 15% increase in showings in Toronto, and 36% increase in offers in Toronto. And I'm looking at the price point, and it's significantly higher this week than last week. So that tells me all these people are buying probably larger, more expensive, low-rise homes versus condos. So that's an interesting trend to keep an eye on. Whereas in Peel Region, the number of showings decreased about 4%. Number of offers went up a little bit, about 2%. So I was curious as to how that broke down between Mississauga and Brampton. And Brampton is still much more active than Mississauga is. I mean, we're seeing it about 2.5 offers for every sale. 2.5 offers for every sale in Mississauga, but about 3.15 offers for every sale in Brampton. We had 3% fewer listings in Brampton than Mississauga, 8% fewer sales, but 17% more showings and 20% more offers. So a lot of people are going out in Brampton, looking at places, putting offers on places, maybe not getting them, So that tells me there's a lot of bidding wars going on, right? So the increase in bidding wars in Brampton is highly likely. Or it could be, um, people, tire kickers, right? So they're just trying to go in with a low offer and just lowballing sellers and seeing what sticks, right? So it could be one or the other, but I have seen an increase in multiple offer situations in Brampton, so that's probably likely what's going on there. So that's that. Again, any questions, by all means, I'll take them now. If not, I want to leave you with one last thought, and I've said this before. The most important thing to remember uh, when you're thinking of buying or selling a house is to work with an agent who is not only experienced and knows what they're doing, but who cares, right? This person has to truly care about you and your situation, and not just be looking for another commission check. Okay, there's too many of those types of agents out there. The ABC, I call them the ABC agents, always be closing, right? But you want somebody who's going to understand your situation and represent you. If you're buying a home, you want your own agent. And the reason why you want your own agent is because they're going to be negotiating for you and working for you. If you go to the listing agent, they're going to be representing the seller and negotiating for the seller. So they're trying to get the seller the highest price. So don't be fooled in thinking that the listing agent is going to discount their commission or take 2.5% off the purchase price or off the asking price so that you can get into the house, because that asking price may be 5% above market value, maybe 10% above market value. You don't know. You want your own agent who's going to do their own research and do their own comps and tell you exactly what that house is worth. Okay, so that's that in a nutshell. Have a great day. We'll see you next week.